Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Remotely Managing AV over IP Dante Networks. I'm Mark Pescatori, Content Director for Systems Contractor News. Thank you for joining us. We have two Audinate experts with us, Jim Kidwell and John Salt. They're the ones who are going to be taking most of your questions at the end. I, of course, being an editor and therefore being obnoxious, I'll be asking questions throughout the event, but they are going to be telling you all about their company's new solutions for the Dante networked audio and video installations. Jim, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Much appreciated. So we'll be talking a lot about AV over IP networks and the remote management of those networks using tools from Dante, from Audinate. We can also, some of these learnings that you'll learn today will also apply to managing your AV over IP networks using SaaS tools. So you can apply this to some of the things you're learning today to other solutions from other companies out there, because SaaS tools are becoming more and more prevalent and popular within the industry. So we wanted to cover as much as we can to make this as helpful for you across your entire management ecosystem. So to get things started, I wanted to basically give everybody a kind of a level set of who we are. You may or may not know Audinate. Audinate is the manufacturer of the Dante technology. We are a leading supplier of technology. We have about 200 employees worldwide. We support people all over the world, and we do trainings for Dante all over the world. So if you haven't encountered us before or know the name Audinate, you may know the name Dante. So Dante is our technology, and it is a technology that manufacturers build into their products to enable AV over IP connections. So now that means signal routing for both audio and video. Most people probably know the audio component of this right now. We have over 4,000 devices on the marketplace from over 600 manufacturers for audio transmission. So that means you can buy a product from one manufacturer and send audio signals to and from other products from other companies. So it enables that very easy connection and transmission of signals. We are working on video devices too. We have over 50 manufacturers that we're working with now to make video transmission signals possible between different manufacturers as well. So AV encoders and decoders, as well as native Dante cameras. And there are about 100 devices now on the marketplace that enable that as well. So to talk about the migration of the technology for AV between the old analog systems and new digital systems, I'd like to throw it over to my colleague, John Salt, who can describe that whole transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are familiar with traditional AV systems, you know that especially in the analog days and even in the digital days now, there are a lot of different types of cables and a lot of different types of signals. So we have, as we see here, analog wires, a hardware DSP, a specific control system, and the media signals are local, meaning that they don't traverse anywhere outside of the room. It's generally a point-to-point connection, and basically it's not connected to any sort of larger control system outside of that room. So sneakernet, meaning you need to walk into the room and check things out when your end user complains that something's not working. However, with the future of AV, instead of having individual devices that all are using their own cables, all of the devices are connected to a network. Everything is using Cat5 or Cat6 cabling, standardized. That can even be structured cabling in your room as well. It's part of the same data network. All of your devices are network connected, and the control system is standardized, not dependent on one single manufacturer, but rather using protocols that are open standards. And the great thing about this is you can monitor the devices from anywhere within your network. And if you're connected to the internet, you can also monitor those devices remotely, and you can also transmit those signals anywhere you like with the proper permissions and the right security. So you go from having just one room, closed system with everything just kind of speaking to itself, to larger network systems. And we start to think of this as an IT system. And your devices go from simply AV devices to really IT endpoints.
I think one of the things that's key with this also is that the network technology that we're using here isn't anything that's specific to the AV industry. So you can use standard off-the-shelf switches and cabling that is something that you would buy from any manufacturer out there on the marketplace, and lots of different switches will be working. So if you have a standard 1 gigabit network, you're going to be able to transmit signals very, very easily and set up AV networks super easily.
So what you're saying is that Dante, you said Dante is proprietary, but the infrastructure is not.
Precisely. So
Okay.
Dante is our proprietary, protocol technology that allows everything to connect easily. But all of the technology that we run on, all of the different switches and cabling and everything that you're gonna need to enable your digital network here using Dante is from any manufacturer. It does not matter. And all of the manufacturers that are including Dante have already worked with us to make sure that the connection between those devices is going to be easy and seamless. So jumping on to speak about the types of Dante networks that are out there right now, we have a couple of different types. When you first start using Dante, most likely what you're doing is an unmanaged network. You basically plug all of your devices into your switches. You open a software product called Dante Controller that we have that is a free application that comes from us. And then all of those devices magically appear in Dante Controller when you're plugged into your switch, and you can route signals between the different devices very easily. And those devices remember where all of the routing happens. So it's all easy to manage. And when you unplug your computer, everything remembers what it's doing and how it's connecting and speaking with each other. So this is a great way to get started using AV over IP. And it's very easy. Now, one thing that it doesn't have is it doesn't have any management or oversight. So if something is having a problem, you need to go to that room to understand what's going on. You need to go in and plug in your computer and say, what's going on? Does something have a super high latency? Is something failing? Did someone pull the plug on something? What happened? So you actually need to be there to diagnose what's going on. With a managed network, you enroll all of those same devices. So you basically plug everything in, you route all of the same signals, all of the signal management and the signal memory of those devices is the same. But all of the control signals and the changing of the control signals and all of the monitoring goes to a centralized application. Now, that can be in a couple of different ways. That can be using a product called Dante Domain Manager, which is a software product that runs on-premise in your WAN that monitors all of the signals and manages all of the configuration of the different domains or the different groupings of items within your network. Or it can be done with a product called Dante Director, which we have that monitors all of those signals remotely. So we're going to jump to the next slide, and we can talk about the differences in between all of those types of devices. The first one that you'll see in the column here is Dante Controller. Dante Controller is that free software that we were talking about that enables you to route signals from place to place. So this is free. This is easy. This works with any type of managed or unmanaged network. This is the core software that you use to actually create your AV over IP networks. Now, what you're seeing on the screen here might not look like what you see on your desktop right now if you're a current Dante user. This is the new user interface that we are going to be coming out with by the end of this calendar year. So look for this update in the near future. The two other options that you see on this screen are Dante Director and Dante Domain Manager. I'm going to take Dante Domain Manager first. Dante Domain Manager, as I said, is the on-premise server that needs to be run on your servers using a hypervisor, so you can actually get that running using something like a virtual server, or I can't remember exactly which products we support.
Our current support is either for ESXi or VMware. I'm sorry, VMware ESXi or Hyper-V. And we're also investigating some other platforms as well. We don't absolutely require that you use a virtual machine, but we find that the vast majority of our clients, that's what they prefer to do.
Yeah, I do believe we also support bare metal as well. So if all of those terms that we just went over are totally foreign to you, that's okay. because the option in the middle, Dante Director, which we'll be talking about and showing today, is by far the easiest way to set up and configure a managed network. And as we said, a lot of the benefits of using a managed network is the ability to organize all of your devices and then manage it, up-level your AV systems into an IT management and control configuration. So you have a better oversight into what's going on and the better ability to manage all of your networks from any location. So using Dante Director, that means you can do all of that remotely if you so desire. So
Jim,
how do you...
Jim, I had a question on that. I told you I'm obnoxious. I'm just going to keep asking questions. What are the major differences between Dante Controller, Dante Director, and Dante Domain Manager?
Well, Dante Controller is something that everybody can get. So Dante Controller allows just basic signal routing and so forth. There's some diagnosis and configuration tools that are directly within Dante Controller that are going to be beneficial to pretty much anybody. So you can, set your clock, set your timing, set your sample rate. You can set a lot of different things directly using Dante Controller. Dante Director is a SaaS service that allows you to manage everything and even change a lot of your signal routing and so forth, but also do configuration management at a higher level, as well as monitoring all of your logs to ensure that everything is functioning as you expect. And as I said, it allows you to take what could be a potentially very, very large and disorganized network and organize it into smaller networks. So for example, if you have thousands of devices connected on your WAN, when you bring up Dante Controller, all of those devices will show up. So it quickly becomes unmanageable when you have just Dante Controller and lots of devices. So where tools like Dante Domain Manager and Dante Director come into play is basically adding that layer of IT management as well as the organization. The organization is kind of the key part here. It also allows you to do some dynamic configuration management to ensure that you can say if you have a large conference room and you need to change configurations to support different types of use cases, you can do those types of switches a lot more quickly and easily by having them pre-configured within Dante Director or Dante Domain Manager. And then the differences between Director and Domain Manager, we'll get kind of into those a little bit later. But the main differences is on-prem versus in the cloud. So now the application of these different types of ecosystems. So Dante Domain Manager, as it currently exists, is mainly designed for larger installs. So if you have a very, very large ecosystem where you do have thousands and thousands of devices, we typically recommend Dante Domain Manager. It is the more robust and more mature solution in the market. It does allow you to add thousands of devices and have a large number of domains across that ecosystem. So you could say, I'm at a university, I have many different buildings, and I have many different rooms within those buildings. You can break all of those up very easily and manage all of those discretely, rather than having them all appear in one large network. And you have the horrible situation where you're routing a mic from one room into an auditorium where it's not supposed to be. So there's great benefits for using Dante Domain Manager there. It is a very powerful, robust system, yet it does require on-premise management and typically a significant amount of IT knowledge and skill. Dante Director, right now, since it's a relatively new product, we just launched it this year, it is not as mature, but it also is designed to make it easy to get into the management system. As you can probably get at, we're nodding to the fact that we understand that Dante Domain Manager, while very powerful, can be a significant uplift to get into actually utilizing the product itself. So Dante Director, we found that a lot of people who are in the smaller Dante network sizes are finding benefits. So churches have been something that have adopted this very quickly. So the network sizes between 20 and 100 devices is typically kind of the sweet spot for Dante Director. It's easy to get up and running. There's no server management, and you can actually do all of that management remotely. So churches, small classrooms, small schools, auditoriums, things like that, installed systems are kind of like the way where this has been the most beneficial for people.
I've got another question for you on that.
Sure.
And then I'll be quiet for a good 25 seconds. And then okay. You mentioned managed versus unmanaged networks. What's the threshold for turning your system into a managed network? Is there a threshold where you suddenly decide we can't do this alone anymore? We need to manage it.
So John, you can chime in on this too. I'll give you my quick thoughts. I think that it doesn't matter. You can start managing at any size. It can get complicated when you get larger networks. So there is a size component to this too, but it's also sometimes about the benefits of remote management and diagnosis, and then your business model. So managed service providers. At a small level, say now here's a good example. Like I'm a managed service provider for churches, and I have 5 churches that I am servicing, which is not an untypical number of customers. Well, a lot of those churches will be running all at the same time, and they may all have small networks. So you may want to manage all of those networks using Dante Director. You can separate all of those accounts into separate accounts and manage them all separately. But then if you're at one church at a service, helping that team manage their AV system, if something's going wrong at the other location, you can log into Dante Director and see their network and see what's going on and diagnose and help fix what's going on remotely without having been there. So that's a benefit of Dante Director over Dante Domain Manager. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with size, but it can play a part. John, do you have any additional thoughts?
Sure. I mean, when we think about the use cases for Dante in, say, a live production or a rental and staging environment, where you go into a venue, throw down all your devices, put on your network switch, have your event, and then you're done. Maybe that doesn't make as much sense for a managed Dante network because each installation is fairly ad hoc. But when you start having installed systems or enterprise systems, you have a campus, devices that are online all the time, things you want to be notified when there are changes or when there's problems with the network, that's where the power of the managed network really comes into play, because you have devices that may be living on your network powered on all the time, and you want to see a notification the minute somebody makes a change you didn't know about, or the minute maybe a device has a fault or there's an issue with your network. That's where managed Dante is really powerful.
Okay, great. I wanted to take a step into hearing from you. Those of you who are here, we'd like to get your feedback about how your networks are currently configured. So one of the components that are necessary for any SaaS service to work properly is access to the internet. So if you could take a second and respond to this survey, we'd love to understand what your networks are currently set up as. Are you using a converged network? In a converged network, we mean that all traffic, including your email and so forth, any employee browsing and your AV network are all converged into a single network. Do your AV networks actually have access to the internet? Do some of them? Are you planning to do so? Or are you currently in a state where everything is air-gapped, or standalone networks where everything is separated? We'll give it just a minute here. I see a lot of results coming in. Just a little more time, and then we'll move on to the results here. All right. I think we're kind of leveling out here. I think we've hit some really good numbers, so I'm going to move on, and then we'll be able to see our poll stats. All right. So these are the statistics that we're seeing here. It looks like about a third of you have internet access to some of your networks, and about a third of you have air-gapped or standalone only networks. Honestly, to me, this is not a big surprise. I know that institutional knowledge within the AV community has been to air-gap your network for a variety of reasons, mostly because you don't want people messing with your network. So we understand that that's here. One point that I would like to make is that if you're wanting to use some of these SaaS tools that are coming online, where all of the software is managed and the server is up in the cloud, you're going to have to do something. So that is something that we think that we might be able to speak directly to here and give you better confidence to say, maybe make a small change to allow the network. You maybe don't need to move all the way to being in a converged network where everything is all running on the same network, but you could open up a small gap in the AV network to give access to the internet to enable you to have some more of this power for IT management and so forth.
Yeah, I would argue, though, if I looking at these numbers, that there are people here who have standalone networks because they have security concerns.
You bet. That is totally true, and that's why we want to speak directly to that security topic. We don't want people coming in from the outside world and messing with our network. That has, privacy concerns. We want to make sure that you're able to keep all of the information inside whatever service that you're working with or organization you're working with, and that you don't have people coming in and trying to take over your network. So how do you do that, and how do you do that safely? We have written a security white paper that goes through a number of these discussions specifically for Dante Director and how you can safely open things up and how you can monitor the traffic on specific ports to ensure that things are functioning properly. The main port that is required for Dante Director is port 8000. So if you're doing port filtering either at the switch level or at the firewall level, the firewall level is typically where people do this, is you can restrict traffic to that one particular port and close down all other ports. There are a few other ports that are required during setup and configuration for Dante Controller, and those are all listed in this diagram here. But all of the systems that you have will be able to communicate with each other just fine using the internal Dante network, but that port 8000 does communicate up and down to Dante Director. Now, if you're using other SaaS services, they should be able to tell you which ports are required for that as well. I'm not an expert on any of the other SaaS services, but they should give you this information. And if you gain this information, it's fairly easy to clamp down your network. And you can also do things like restricting traffic directly to and from the service you're working with. In this white paper, we list out all of the ports and domains that we're sending traffic to and from with Dante Director. So that includes the remote management of your system using Dante Controller. So Dante Controller and Dante Director work hand in hand to manage networks. And one of the benefits of Dante Director is you can use Dante Controller remotely. So if you're sitting at home on your couch, you can fire up Dante Controller and log into your Dante Director account, and it will automatically send all of the traffic from Dante Controller through Dante Director up through the internet and down to whatever network you're managing. John, do you have any tips and tricks about working with security and AV networks?
One thing I would mention is for the basic unmanaged Dante installation, we have a document which we call Dante Information for Network Administrators. You can find that online by searching for it. It is a very valuable thing that I recommend to our customers on almost a daily basis because it shows the different, not only the different ports, but also the different protocols that we use for Dante. Dante makes use of multicast on your network as well. For example, we talk about multicast management. For the network administrators in the room, that can be kind of a scary thing. But I promise we make it manageable, we make it easy. So really taking a look at both of these documents, both the document we've got up here on the screen and our Dante Information for Network Administrators. Really, it's about opening up a conversation with your IT department and saying, here's what our AV devices do. Here are the ports they use. Here's the kind of data rates you can expect. And of course, there being no surprises, right? You don't want to just turn on a bunch of AV devices on a network where your IT administrators are otherwise completely unaware. It's just about having a little bit of knowledge beforehand to show what we're doing, and it's not so scary. And like we say, it uses while Dante is a standard, our own protocol. All of the underpinnings of what makes Dante work are standard network protocols.
All right, thanks, John. Okay, so another benefit of managing your system with either Dante Director or Dante Domain Manager is that you actually get access to the Dante Managed API. So what exactly does that mean? The Managed API is a set of GraphQL requests and calls and APIs that enable you to build connections to devices that you may not have access to otherwise. We have a couple of different integrations already built. for AMX and Crestron, as well as Bitfocus Companion. Those are tools where you can build controls that other people who may not be AV experts to utilize. So you see the Stream Deck here on the screen. That Stream Deck is very common in multiple different environments now. Bitfocus Companion can be used to program in specific buttons that do many different things to your network. So you can do multiple different channel switches to configure the AV network for use in many different ways. So say, for example, I have a system that's set up in a classroom, and that classroom, the instructor wants to switch between a lavalier mic and a mic that is set on the podium, or switch between the AV coming from their laptop and or some other device like a projector at the back of the screen. They can do this if you program specific buttons to enable that type of switching. And if you've ever seen a Stream Deck before, you can put anything on those buttons and you can program that in any particular way. The managed API can also be used by other manufacturers to get information about your network and provide that to their management tools. So AVI SPL, who is an integrator that many of you might know, they have a product called Symphony. And Symphony is a management application that pulls information from multiple different systems to provide it all in one convenient dashboard. They have built an API connection with the Dante network. So if you are utilizing AVI SPL and you have Dante Director already or Dante Domain Manager, you can connect that directly to AVI SPL's Symphony product and monitor everything in one single location. John, do you have any thoughts on monitoring, management, and control with the API?
Yeah, absolutely. A very powerful thing that you can do to kind of write your own custom applications and do things, like change routes, monitor the status of devices, look at their subscriptions and so forth. And I would also add that with Managed Dante, especially with Dante Domain Manager, there are a number of powerful other monitoring tools, whether that's email alerts or setting SNMP alerts. We offer a variety of pathways. So if you're looking for what they call the single pane of glass monitoring solution, or you want monitoring of your Dante devices built into the same monitoring platforms that you use for other networks, we can support that as well.
Okay. Thanks, John. I'd like to go ahead and take a quick moment to do a demo of Dante Director. Excuse me while I share my screen. All right. So what we're looking at here is a Dante Director. So what I've done is I've come to director.dante.cloud. I've logged in, and I'm looking at my my system remotely here. So I have multiple different devices. These are all running over in Cambridge in the UK, and I am here in Portland, Oregon. So it's management, truly remote management on the other side of the world. You can see at the very high level here what's going on with my systems. You can see that things have turned red and then green. These are virtual devices that are running on a server that's purposely overloaded. So you can see that we're causing various issues to happen just by virtue of it being overloaded. If we're seeing these issues happening, we can say, oh, okay, what's going on? I want to click into this site here, and this is as I was speaking before I move on. As I was speaking earlier, the main benefit, or one of the main benefits of using a managed system, is it allows you to group devices into smaller chunks. So I've grouped these up into classrooms, auditorium, and my public announce system. I would logically, if I were in a university, I would have multiple classrooms here, and they would all be set up separately. So I could have Classroom 1, Classroom 2, Classroom 3, and they would all be set up separately. So you would be able to easily diagnose what's going on in various systems. So if I click into my classroom here, you can see right at the top level status, you can say, oh, look, there's a subscription issue with this one particular device here. And then I could click on this device and come directly in and see what's going on, what's happening within my device, check all of the different settings on that device, also check all of the log events for that particular classroom and see where you may be able to fix something. You can configure send and receive channels. So you see this is where my channels are having problems. Oh, those channels don't exist. So if you need to change that, you could click the edit button, come in, find where you need to get a signal from, and then subscribe to that channel. And then that channel would actually be subscribed. So there you go. That updated my problem, and that did that remote. Now I am on the other side of the planet, and I am configuring the system in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. So very easy to go ahead and open things. One of the things that I do want to talk about is being able to go through and check devices. So I can check particular devices themselves. So if I come into my auditorium here, the status looks good. I can come in and look at all of my devices at a high level and see what's going on with connectivity, clocking, subscription, latency. If I click this button here, it also shows me all of the devices in a list form. And then I can edit devices. I can unassign devices. I can also check firmware updates to ensure that everything is up to date if I need to. I can also configure users to my site. So now one of the differences between an unmanaged and a managed network is that unmanaged networks, any Joe guy can come in and say, hey, I'm going to plug into your network. And if I'm using Dante Controller, I can update your network. When you are using a management system, you have to log in. You have to authenticate to that system before actually being able to manage that system. So if I were, say, we've had this very exact instance here where if you have a Dante network in a music school and you have all of these music students who have every right and every desire to want to learn how to use Dante systems, they would plug into their music school, Ethernet port and say, oh, look at all these devices that I see on the network. And then they can go ahead and just change anything in the network. That may have some positive aspects, but if you're running in a classroom and you're trying to give a lecture, you don't want all of your students just changing things on the fly. So having some sort of authentication system does help. So the permission systems within Dante Director are fairly limited. You can give access to people within your Dante Director account to one particular site. So for example, I have Tom here, who I just gave access to the public announcement system, but you could also give full access and administrator access across all of your different accounts or your domains. So if you do, for example, have a classroom or a school setting where you have a particular like auditorium, and in the auditorium, all of the students definitely need to be able to reroute things and change things because they're working on productions, and that's totally appropriate. Yeah, you can give them access there, but then keep them out of any of the things that are running for classrooms. You don't want them interrupting instruction that's happening in another room while they're doing their regular work, or routing what's going on in a classroom over to the auditorium for whatever reason. You can also come in and check your clocking. So clocking can be either unicast or multiclass subnet clocking. You can route signals across subnet domains. One of the restrictions within a lot of Dante networks is that you can't send signals across subnet bounds. That's for good reason. You don't want to be flooding your entire network with signals. But when you're utilizing a tool like Dante Director or Dante Domain Manager, you can set up subscriptions that enable you to run things across those subnet barriers. It basically creates a large network that allows you to move signals from one to another very easily within your network. And then you also, within Dante Director, get access to a full event log that shows exactly what's going on within your network and how things have been changed. You'll see in this event log here that my demo key has been doing lots of work and changing channels and so forth. Well, I'm going to show you exactly what that means. For example, I am in my auditorium here. I am wanting to look at what's going on within my auditorium. I got lots of information with Dante Director, but I do want to go in and check things with Dante Controller. I can click this Open Dante Controller button. It comes over, launches Dante Controller, and automatically logs me in. You'll see that I have a domain listed at the top of Dante Controller here, and then this shows me all of the domains that I have access to. I have a lot of domains. because I'm an administrator for Dante Director, and I have lots of different places that I'm working on, so I can easily switch between those domains. It automatically pulls these up. Remember, I'm running Dante Controller remotely here. I am running a network that's in Cambridge in the UK. And this is running all the way across to the other side of the planet. So you can see I can change my subscriptions here. I can do whatever I need to move things around. So if I want to unsubscribe something, I can just click and unsubscribe that channel. I can do all of this remotely. I can check device info. I can, check the clock status. I can do whatever I need to do remotely, and it's just fine. So I've done all of this. This is great. I can go in and check my latency. I can do whatever I need to do here. What about that command and control function that we talked about earlier using BitFocus Companion? So again, BitFocus Companion is a free tool. It's not something that is made by Audinate. It is something that we have enabled a connection for Dante API, managed API connections to be able to function properly. So if you want to create a connection, you basically come in, you choose, looks like I'm having problems with this starting. So go ahead and start my connection here. Hang on a sec here. There we go. Okay, so if I'm looking at this network here, the only thing that it requires is an API host URL and an API key. So if I come in to Director here, and I look at my API keys, I have an easy ability to add an API key. So basically I can just name it, and then I can give it restricted access to whichever network location that I want to have restricted access to. I create that API key, and then I copy the API URL, that GraphQL location, and paste that API key into Director. So that's exactly what I've done here. You'll see this API key. It's calling Dante Director at this location, using this key. Once I've built those keys, I can do some pretty cool things. I can create buttons that do multiple different things. So in my example here, I'm in an auditorium, and I have multiple different devices that I want to connect to. I have a copy of Dante Virtual Sound Card running on my computer that's running music. And that music is being played in between acts that we have that are running on our stage, where we would route to our stage box. So if I want to switch channels back and forth between my DVS for my computer and my stage box, I don't want to have to come in and say, okay, this is the right channel, this is the left channel, this is the center channel, this is all of the different speakers that I want to route to. I want to gang that all up into one particular button. And so that's what I've done here. So when this button is pressed, it automatically comes through and says, okay, this is the transmission channel and this is the receiver, and it makes all of these changes. Same thing with the stage box. The stage box routes all of the channels to the appropriate things. And then I also have a clear button that clears them all out. So if you want to look at how that functions, let me show you. So if I come over, I show Dante Controller, and then I have a copy. I have my buttons here running on a virtual device. So this is my virtual button push here. So think of this as a Stream Deck running on your local system. You can apply this UI to this and put whatever words you want on it. And when I click the button, it automatically says, okay, I'm going to make all of those channel switches. And so remember, this is not just running locally. This is running on my network in Cambridge on the other side of the planet. And it's just sending GraphQL requests to Dante Director, which passes them over through the network over to Cambridge in the UK. And it's just as easy as that, button pushes. And then this is how you can make UIs for dummies, I guess, for a better sense of word. So you can allow quick switching. So that's a nice way to be able to add some functionality, whether you're working internally on your own network, or if you are a service provider or integrator who wants to do that for others. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this moment, and we'll get back to some questions and answers. So if you have questions and answers, questions, not answers, hopefully we'll be able to provide the answers. Please go ahead and enter them into the question window, and we can move on from there and answer as many questions as we can. One thing I will mention is that Dante Director is free to try. So if you're thinking, yeah, I want to move up into the management world, but I'm not exactly sure if I'm ready to do so yet, I want to just give it a shot and try it out on maybe a room in my configuration. You can try it out. It's free for 30 days. Yeah, so you can either use that URL on the screen or shoot the QR code and it'll take you directly to where you need to go.
We've got a question for you already here from Klaus. Does audio managed via Dante Director actually flow out to the cloud and back?
That's a great question. John, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, the short answer is no, it does not. Both of our managed Dante products, both Director and Dante Domain Manager, are management tools only. All of your media streams still stay within your local network. The cloud network, that is, a high availability cloud service, basically that should never go down. Even if you were running, let's say, Dante Domain Manager, which is our on-prem solution, and you accidentally unplugged your server, you would still have all of your audio and video routes. You just wouldn't be able to log in and change anything. But with Dante Director, this is a high availability cloud service, so it should be available 99.999% of the time. And again, no, audio and video stays within your local network.
So one of the things that I will mention with that, there are desires, and you bring up a desire that I think is a reasonable one, to say, hey, I want to be able to route signals from location to location, and how would I do that? So I can say that we're currently investigating how we can get that done. We have a number of hardware manufacturers that are looking into helping with that because it is a common desire. Otherwise, if you're trying to route signals from place to place, you typically have to have a wide area network. Some people have been doing what we colloquially call Dante over distance, where you can route signals from one far off location to another location. There is a limitation of 40 milliseconds of latency within a standard Dante network. So that is the way that most people route signals over distance. And if you do have to have a fast enough network to do that. Some people do that over dark fiber. I believe there have been some fairly large worldwide sporting events that people perform on an amateur level. I can't name exactly who that was, but they did their broadcast from Paris, and all of the audio was transmitted over distance to a facility in the United States in Connecticut for all of their gallery work. So all of their mixing was done remotely all the way across the planet, and that was all done with Dante over distance. Now, if you want to transmit and do higher level mixing and production in the cloud, we do have an alternate solution called Dante Connect, and that enables things like gateways that enable cloud mixing with multiple different products on the market. So SSL, Waves, CalRec, a variety of other online production tools. You can do that. That is mostly used by tier one broadcasters at this moment, but we're working on ways where we can help people have those higher latencies. And the latency that is enabled with Dante Connect is up to 1 second. So you don't have to stay within that 40 millisecond bracket to make that function.
All right. Sky wants to know, does the API integrate into any current digital audio console?
So I'm not sure exactly how that would function. John, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that would depend on the particular console. I can say that the API is GraphQL based. So if you have a device that supports creating queries using GraphQL, then yes, it is supported. But in general, most Dante-enabled consoles are going to have some degree of control over your routing matrix and of your other Dante settings. The console will give you an interface that allows you to control some things without having to log into Dante Controller. But would need to know a little bit more about the specific console regarding the API.
All right. Right Sound Studios. They want to know, how does Dante deal with port security? Meaning if a setup is used, but someone is troubleshooting or an accident, on accident, they unplug a switch port, they forget to pull it back in. Where are we with port security?
We have a defined list of ports that we use for the Dante protocol. So if we're talking here about TCP/IP ports, again, I would refer you to our document called Dante Information for Network Administrators. That lays that out pretty well. If you're talking about specifically the switch ports on your switch, again, that'll depend on your specific switch configuration and how you've configured the security settings. But we do find some users have pretty strict security settings per port on their switches because they don't want anyone to just walk in and be able to plug into the Dante network or plug in a device they're unfamiliar with.
Here's a very specific question for you from Steve. He wants to know, will Dante Director work with a Netgear M4250?
Absolutely, it will. Dante, whether managed or unmanaged, will work with virtually any switch. Certainly the Netgear AV line has become very popular, and we've seen quite a few of our customers using them. But I would just add, when you're looking at switch selection, the one thing that we absolutely will break Dante is if you have what's called energy efficient Ethernet, also known as green Ethernet, where the switch will try to power off ports when they're not being used. That can really mess with some of the Dante clocking and timing settings. So anything other than a switch that has green Ethernet enabled will work with Dante. But as you get into more complex managed switches, that will give you more of an ability to create VLANs, to set up profiles per port, do all of those network management things that you'd like to do.
Jordan would like to know, would Director be best for IT management of AV in a large performing arts center?
Again, I would say we would look at the size of the deployment and how many devices you have, because Dante Domain Manager might also be appropriate in that case as well. But for a large performing arts center, Dante Director might be very appropriate, actually, especially if you have a large number of different halls or venues or rooms within there, and you want to see everything in one dashboard. Absolutely, Dante Director would be worth looking at.
All right, Carl's got a broadcast question. He says, Dante Director requires the on-site Dante network to have a gateway. How does this work with closed networks in a broadcast environment?
So Dante Director does require access to the internet. So if it is a closed network and you do not have internet access, then unfortunately, Dante Director is not really an option since it's a cloud-based service. In that case, we would really suggest for one of our broadcast customers to take a look at Dante Domain Manager, because that's something that we can set up on-prem. And Dante Domain Manager gives you all of the functionality of Dante Director and a little bit more. You actually have a little more fine-grained control over user permissions and clocking and some of the very specific settings that broadcasters need to worry about.
One thing I also
go ahead.
One thing I'll also mention, he mentioned the gateway there too, and that is particularly for Dante Connect. And Dante Connect is a cloud-based product, so designed to be worked with AWS or Google Cloud. So you can do cloud-based production. So you can work with that. We also have had that installed in dark fiber networks. So if you have dark fiber that you want to use your own private cloud, we have had people successfully install and run Dante Connect on a dark cloud network, and that uses Dante Domain Manager as a cloud tool. So if you're more interested in Dante Connect, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we have someone contact you, because that is a more complicated sale that we do have specialized integrators that we work with for that.
I know we're running short on time. We're never going to get to all the questions, and there are a lot, but this is a cool one from Jocelyn. You have several networks with several devices. Is it necessary to have them all networked on the same clock? And how do you manage the clock between networks?
They would only need to be on the same clock if you want to route audio between those networks. If each network is just having those devices transmit and receive within that subnetwork, those can be different clocks. But what we typically see with our end users who have particularly complex and distributed requirements where they actually want to route audio back and forth between networks in real time, then we start doing some applications with, again, what we call Dante Connect and Dante Domain Manager, where you would actually have a hardware clock at each site that is synced to a GPS satellite. The GPS provides a standardized time reference for each of your sites, and we basically configure that for everything to follow the same GPS clock so that all of the sites can talk to each other in sync. But again, a little more, if you do want to route audio between networks where there's more than, say, 20 to 40 milliseconds of latency between those networks, that's where we start looking at some of the more advanced options with Dante Connect.
All right, I'm going to give you one more question because I know you got more to get to, and that is from Bob. He wants to know, it's a good question, do you typically recommend a dedicated computer on-prem for Dante management functions?
Again, for Dante Domain Manager is a server-based product which you would run on-prem. For Dante Director, that is a cloud service, but you wouldn't necessarily need a dedicated computer for that just to run the web interface and just to run Dante Controller. We do see that some of our end users do like to do that and just have a dedicated workstation just used for Dante functions, because that workstation will often be connected to the Dante network and the Dante network only. But absolutely not a requirement for Dante Connect, but for Dante Director. But for Dante Domain Manager, yes, that's a server-based product. You would have something on-prem. Again, that could be virtualized if you wanted to do that.
And just to reiterate what John was saying there, you can manage Dante Director or utilize Dante Director using any web interface. So you can be on your phone even and using a browser technology there. It is a responsive design within the actual UI itself. So you can make that super tiny and do the management directly on your phone, not a problem. One thing that I do want to have a chance to get to, I know we're still on our Q&A slide, but I want to bounce over to this Dante Director versus Dante Domain Manager feature comparison. We've referred to this to both products quite a bit here. Dante Director, as we did mention, is the newer product. So there are a number of features that are utilized in both of these different products. And honestly, we don't have a preference right now. We want you to choose the right solution that's going to meet your needs. So if you were to ask us to say which one of our babies is a favorite, we like them both. So honestly, the number of devices does matter. How large you want to scale it does matter. The granularity of your user access can matter in some installations too. The ability to do remote management is very strong with Dante Director. There you can do some management with Dante Domain Manager, but that is required for that on-premise server. There's also, if you're required to have AES or a SMPTE 2110 connectivity, that's something that Dante Domain Manager can enable. We haven't built that into Dante Director yet. There is a lot of shared, just as an aside here, there's a lot of shared code between these two. So as we are building new things in Dante Director, a lot of those new things will be inherited by Dante Domain Manager and shared back and forth. So we're constantly doing upgrades and making things better for all across the board. So do we have any other questions, Mark, that we can get to really quickly before we move forward?
Probably not. We have way too many questions.
Okay. I'm happy to go on.
There's one question that showed up a lot.
Okay.
How much is this going to cost?
Oh, that's a good question. I do actually happen to have a slide for that. So for Dante Director, it is a base price of $20 a month. So it's a SaaS service, and it's significantly more affordable than the Dante Domain Manager product. Dante Domain Manager, when necessary, honestly is not going to break your bank, but it varies based on your needs for cost. So Dante Director will scale with you as you need to go. So you can start at the $20 base number, and that'll suit up to 20 devices. And then as you grow, it's just $1 additional additional device per month. Okay,
all right, great.
I think we have a prize winner that we need to announce?
I believe we do. Yes, the Amazon card prize winner. The Amazon gift card goes to Tim Godby from California. Tim, congratulations on winning your Amazon gift card. And we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Jim, John, your expertise is very much appreciated. And we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Now, is Dante Director right for you? Once again, they want you to sign up for a trial. It's a free trial. getdante.com/director. That's getdante.com/director. Thanks again, everybody.